In Acts 1:8 it says this: "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." He says you're going to receive power. And that word power in the Greek language is the word dunamis. And it comes from the same root word that eventually gives us the word dynamite. And so when we go globally, when we say, yes, this is a part now of who we are, when we embrace the mission of the church, not just the small C church, but when we embrace the mission of the capital C church, we're saying, God, we believe that our call begins right here at home. He says you're going to receive power, that power from the Holy Spirit, and that when you have that, it begins locally. For them, their hometown was Jerusalem. And he says your witness is going to begin right here where you're at right now. And if we don't do that well, we have no right to go any other place. But he said, we talked about this the first week, you're going to be witnesses in Jerusalem, and then in the larger region of Judea, and then the next region, Samaria. And then he says this, which is astounding. He says, and to the uttermost parts of the earth. Now, week one, I talked about that they didn't have internet capabilities. They couldn't jump on a plane and go to the othermost parts of the earth like we can today. Even for some of those longer trips, it might take a full day to get there, but we can literally fly almost any location in the world in a day or a day and a half. For them, it took that long for them just to go a couple hundred miles. And so could you imagine the command of Jesus at this point to a group of people who weren't necessarily known for their traveling? They weren't well educated. They definitely didn't have a lot of finances. And so Jesus says to this group of believers, to this relatively small group of believers who'd been undergoing persecution up until this point, he says, here's your command. You've seen what happened. This is after the resurrection. He says, you've seen what has taken place. Now you go be my witnesses in our area, but then literally you be my witnesses, the witnesses about what's taken place to the uttermost parts of the earth. Now, for us right now, I want us to put ourselves in the shoes of those early disciples. The early disciples weren't necessarily well educated. They didn't have a lot of finances. And they're being told, here's what you're supposed to do. Go take this message around the world. And so if we're gathering together and we're figuring out, okay, how are we going to do that? How is the message of Jesus from this small group of disciples, how is it going to be just proclaimed out to the nations around us? How are we going to be able to grasp that as our mission? For you and I, it would probably seem like an overwhelming call. And yet Jesus says to a group of people much like us, here's what you're supposed to do. Now, therefore, you're supposed to go. Because of the power of the message, you're now supposed to go. When we embrace the mission to go globally, we start to picture the power of the early church.